Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Workplace Wednesday. Happy New Year again. It's Felicia Ricards, and believe it or not, I joined you last week when most people were still in vacation mode. So if you missed me last week, pop back to my events page and have a quick catch up. This year is starting off with a boom, a bang, because this year is about action. If you have been following this journey on Workplace Wednesday, I started out in season one with my associate and accountability partner in May of 2025, Zena Collins, with season one that was about collaboration and connection. Season two kicked off somewhere around September of 2025 through the end of the year. And that was more about me showcasing social impact leaders, leaders in community spaces, leaders trying to improve businesses, improve outcomes, and for the most part, quietly going about their business without seeking validation. Now, season three, which I am kind of drawing a line for the start of 2026, is going to be about action. So for today, stay with me because the topic is a big one. Three strategic actions for executives who feel their jobs are under threat. I'll let that sit with you for a minute, but imagine what would happen next if you showed up to work tomorrow, called into a meeting or a Zoom call or a telephone call, and unexpectedly were told that your position is no longer going to be included within the company framework. Now, when that happens, and I say that, you can probably feel your mind spinning through probably six or seven different scenarios. What do I do next? How do I navigate the financial implications? How do I find a new job? How do I tell my family? How do I move on? How do I get over the grieving period? Because there is a grieving period. Like everything is how, maybe even why. Because sometimes we get into our role and our role defines us as people. And when the role defines us as a person, who we are, then we tend to get offended, maybe disgruntled, maybe hurt, disillusioned, because that role no longer exists. So today I thought it was prudent for me to speak about that. And what I found is that in speaking with my one-to-one clients, no matter where they are in the world, they're kind of speaking about a couple of things that are happening around them in the workplace. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on the why, a little bit of time on some of the obvious things that you can be listening and looking for in the workplace. And also for today, just a three-part framework. This is huge. This is more than just three parts. But I'm going to condense this down to a three-part framework just for today. And then at the end, I'm going to have an asset, a document, questionnaire for you to complete on your own, private and confidentiality, and the opportunity to follow up with me directly. Because I understand that in an environment where you're at work, you can't necessarily have these conversations safely. So as you remember, my goal is to provide a safe space, a safe place and space for these conversations. So let's get started. Framework, kind of set the stage. This is non-alarmist. This is a real world conversation that I probably have a few times a week. And I'm also starting to get messages sent to me quietly, letting me know that, listen, I'm no longer at ABC Company. So if you hear of anything, I am looking. So because this is starting to happen and it's starting to kind of reach my earwave, and I'm going to share that with you. Practical follow-up conversation, assets, and step-by-step. Just three-step framework for today. And I can expand on this for more than this 30 minutes. But reach out to me directly because I value your time. And today I want to keep this a bit concise. So why? We know the obvious ones. We know the changes in technology. We know that companies are going to be using technology and AI to streamline processes. I'm going to use the correct term. Or in some cases, some global companies may be using digital transformation to eliminate some headcount. Let's just be honest about what's happening. And then also there are cost pressures. So let's recall that, it wasn't too long ago that every company actually lost masses and masses of money due to the COVID pandemic and subsequently having to wrap up a business after that. And some probably haven't recouped those losses yet. So let's be realistic about what's happening at the company level. There are board expectations, so competition. Companies and boards are looking to be first to market, be the most creative, the most innovative, and be the ones that clients are going to come to first for solutions and answers, and then also the products and services. And then strategic positioning. So strategic positioning is the company wanted to be the most visible in the marketplace and the go-to for whatever product or service they're providing. So all of this is kind of swirling around. If you think kind of a weather event, the weather storm, wind, rain, hail, snow, all of it's all combined. This is pretty much what's happening from a business perspective. So that's the why. So what will happen is conversations will be had outside of your presence. And unfortunately, the lower, I use the term loosely, the further away you are from a direct conversation with the board and or the CEO, the more you should be paying attention to the words that are spoken in meetings, the terms that are used in communications, in written communications, when your direct leader is speaking. Listen to those terms and pick up on, what is being said about change, what is being said about streamlining the company, what is being said about transition or looking at department structures. If those conversations are being had, that means that it's likely that every role is being reviewed. So pay attention to what's happening within your own environment. Think of yourself and how you may or may not be still aligned with the company and their values and their mission. And the worst thing to do is to show if you're not aligned. And that happens. And everything I'm going to speak about, I've done before. So this is not judgment nor criticism. Everything I'm going to speak about, I can recall a scenario where I've actually done this. So don't act this out. Sometimes people think, I've kind of checked out a bit from my job, but it's okay because nobody can figure it out. Well, people can pick up on it, and that makes you an easy target. So make sure that you're still showing your value. Make sure that you are still participating energetically and eagerly within the workplace to ensure that you're not a direct and immediate target. And also operational versus strategic. So sometimes people will say to me, well, I worked really hard. If they're upset about losing their role or upset about the way that it looks like it's going to pan out, people will say, I've worked really hard. I've given everything. Unfortunately, working hard is somewhat operational. And what the company is going to be looking for, they're going to be looking for value, solutions, impact, and strategic frameworks. So people will look and say, well, listen, I've been here for 10 or 15 years. I've worked hard at this job. I've given everything. I've showed up early, stayed late. And if you remember, in one of my previous workplace conversations, I actually said that working hard is a minimum standard. So companies will be looking at all of this. Who's making the contribution? If we are having a conversation in the company about what can we improve on, make sure that you are engaged in that conversation. As long as you're employed, make sure that you are actively employed. And I just want to state that first before I go into the framework of the 3 options. I wanted to also point on, make sure I don't forget to say, acting on what you want to do next. So if you've decided that, this no longer fits my vision, no longer fits what I want to do, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling the stress, make sure that your actions internally are still engaged, but externally that you're taking some steps to make a transition. Don't sit and let it fester, because again, people will pick up on it, and then that makes you, not only makes you a target, but it also starts to eat you up inside. And again, I've had these experiences. So I'm sharing from things that I've been through as well. So let's go through the 3-step framework. I'm going to make it quite concise today, but I'm going to invite you. This is the season of action. I'm going to invite you to reach out. If you can, share some of the experiences that you may be having here. If not, reach out directly, and I will share with you a complete checklist and a framework so that you can kind of have a look, sit down, and review where you are. I'll send that to you. So, number 1, re-anchor yourself. And I kind of gave that away a little bit earlier, but re-anchoring yourself means just sitting and taking stock, reflection on what the current state of your workplace is. Understand what the expectations are, if they have changed, and if they have changed, understand how you fit into those expectations, be that your role, your accountability, your lines of reporting, what the company is looking for. If they're looking for something different than you're accustomed to providing, then make sure you understand what you need to shift in order to move with the expectation. So re-anchor yourself and make sure that when you re-anchor yourself, you are not sought out because you work hard and you can get the stuff done. Make sure that you're sought out for solutions. And when questions are being asked about how could we do this better? What could we do within this department? What do you think about? How should we look at this? Is there a suggestion that you have? Make sure you're being sought for those conversations and not just, can you finish 50 invoices in a day? That's going to be really important because the transactions are going to be the first to be outsourced. If you can get through 50 transactions in a day, and then those 50 transactions are digitized, then where does that leave you in terms of your value, your strategy, your impact within the company? So just keep in mind how you are anchored, how you're re-anchoring yourself within the company so that you have value at a level other than I work hard, I've worked here for several years, I stay early, I come in early and I stay late and I give everything. As difficult as it sounds, I'm having a realistic conversation because this is what I'm hearing when I'm speaking to individuals. And the last thing I want to say on re-anchoring, it's possible that you may already have ideas or thoughts about exiting your company. And I can recall working with one individual who said, well, listen, really, in 6 months, I don't want to be with this company anymore. So I said, okay, that's fine. That's a confidential conversation between that person and myself. My next step was, what do you want to be said about you after you leave this company? And are you expecting any references from this company? And what legacy do you want to leave for your team members after you've left? So for that 6 months, I worked with that individual to make sure that they left a legacy, that they left solid framework for their team members, that they fed to their leaders what they thought was the future of their department, rather than quitting before your end date. Because face it, most people when they leave a role will look back and think, who can I get a reference from? Who can I have to validate the great work that I've done? And if you check out too early, you eliminate some of those options. So just be mindful of that. So that's the first one. Re-anchor yourself and then also understand what the financial implications are if you are going to no longer be employed. That conversation is going to come back next week. I'll leave that to the end. I have an amazing guest with me coming up next week, and we're going to strictly talk about the finances. So that's number one. Number two, control the narrative before it's written for you. Control the narrative before it's written for you. Once again, in these scenarios, there are going to be so many meetings and conversations, discussions, Maybe the CEO will have a review with all of his executive team. The executive team will have a review meeting with the management team. Wherever you fit in the kind of the framework of the company, make sure that when your name is mentioned, it's in a positive light. That does two things. That ensures that even if you are eventually separated from the company, you can leave on the best possible terms. And that doesn't mean that you kind of have to run around, trying to make sure that you're best friends with people that, you can't wait to get out of your workspace, but just make sure that you are creating the narrative. Make sure that you're visible in positive ways, and being visible in positive ways, again, that's showing up in meetings productively, that is creating productive and strategic frameworks that you can share for the future of the company, even if that's short term. What that does, again, it solidifies your kind of reputation as a collaborator in the company. Make sure that you are suggesting forward thinking solutions. Let's say, for example, your company is going to be going through a merger. You're thinking of, okay, well, I understand who company B is that we're going to be merging with. These are some of the things that I think might come up in the future. Now, you don't want to kind of give away, I guess. Most people would say, well, I don't want to give away any secrets, or I don't want to give away suggestions if they're going to get rid of me. But my point is, control the narrative so that it's not written about you. You are creating who you are. You're creating who you want, or how you want your legacy to be remembered, and how you want your contribution to be recognized, so that if and when you're separated, you then have your allies that you can fall back on for either support, for references, and maybe even they may be able to pass you on to one of their associates in another company, if that's possible. So control the narrative, visibility, communication, forward-looking solutions, and make sure that your communications are strategic updates, not just status reports. So I completed the 50 invoices. Again, those will be the first types of tasks that are going to be outsourced, or passed over to for digital transformation consideration. So what have you done? I completed the 50 invoices. There were a couple of anomalies. This is what might make sense moving forward. So you are controlling the narrative. And in other rooms, when you're not present, when someone else says, what is the issue with some of these invoices? They'll say, listen, I think I have it because, Lisa sent me a strategic kind of summary of what's happening with these invoices. And this really makes sense. So maybe she can work on that project before she leaves. But keep in mind, a lot of times after these separations happen, guess what? There's a gap. And when there's a gap, many of the companies will say, actually, do you know what? We have a little 3-month window while we transition from current state as is to the future state. And are you able to support us on a contract basis while we work this out, or while we transition this state, this process? So that's another option as well. If you've created some solutions or framework for what could be for that company, many times if they're going to be working on a process to either digitize or transfer it or scale down, they might still need some support. Keep that in mind. So don't just think, okay, this is the end and I'm just going to go away. If you've created space to be valid or be validated and supportive after the separation, that's still an option. And then the third is create your own options before you need them. So kind of set the stage. One option could be some short-term consulting projects, well, if you're still looking for a new role, but also create your options before you need them from a professional perspective. In today's work environment, the worst thing that you could do is get a role, get a job, get employment, and then sit and be, I hate to say it, 100% focused on that particular role. You have to pick your head up in today's environment. You have to know what's going on in the rest of the world, in your industry, in your competitive market. You have to understand it in order to create value, to add value, to be an impact leader. You cannot just sit and carry out your managerial roles, and I'll say that in air quotes. You have to have some value past actually just kind of checking in on people to see what else they have accomplished. So create the options before you need them. And that could mean making sure that you are on an industry association with people from other companies, but your same industry, or some type of board situation, or some type of collaborative project. And that what that does, it expands your network outside of your own company. So let's use the example, if you're working in financial services, that's easy for me because I have for quite some time. If you're working in that industry, make sure that you align with counterparts from other companies within that industry. If there is a professional a learning event, if there is a professional speaking event, a panel event, association, board participation, make sure that you are seen as reputable and an asset to be able to be included, and asked to be included. And that creates a circle around you of people who will be your allies other than your employer. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky because in any relationship, this is all about relationship. In any relationship, when you are considered attractive to somebody else from outside your core relationship, in this case, your employer will perk up and say, okay, Jane, I see that, you're going to be sitting on this panel. And right away, that tells your employer that you have value outside, above and beyond your day-to-day role. So create the options so that when you need them, you don't have to kind of run around circling, trying to figure out who you can reach out to determine what's the next step for you. So you're creating a network of allies before you need them. I've mentioned associations on board and studying the marketplace. And then I also mentioned, this is really important and one that I have been guilty of. Ensure that your mood is not shifting negatively before you're ready to leave. And I understand that can be difficult. It can be frustrating. It can be very emotional when you feel, you can see what's happening. You can hear the messaging around you. You understand that it might change. It might happen and you're not sure when. And it can be really difficult to stay committed and positive and forward thinking. That's where the strategy about creating that life outside of your day-to-day responsibilities is so important. And that life, I mentioned associations and board, but also in your personal space. So whether that be a swim club, an exercise club, everything that you can do to continue to build your resilience while you are transitioning, or even while you're expecting to transition. Everything that you can do is critical to make sure that you can deal emotionally. Again, my ally Zena will be speaking in the background about emotional intelligence, to make sure that you can regulate yourself emotionally while this turmoil is ongoing. Now, today I committed to speaking to you about that framework, just the 3-part framework. So just to recap, re-anchor yourself. 2, control the narrative before it's written for you. And then 3, create options before you need them. I have created a bit of a questionnaire and you add up your score, you answer the questions, and you come up with kind of where you are in terms of your validation, your visibility, your, in your workplace. So if you'd like that from me, reach out to me directly and I'll send that through to you. And then also, I am strongly recommending that no matter how secure, no matter how comfortable you feel, and no matter how much you feel like you are not under threat or review, this is the time to take an analysis. Take some time to just review, to understand what your positioning is, to understand the what if, and to really be look inside yourself and think about what value you are adding besides just completing the work, completing the tasks, and being busy, because that's going to be the minimum standard marker for now and going forward. And what's going to happen is the expectation is going to be strategically aligned, impact based, collaborative leadership. You're going to have more generations that we've ever seen in the workplace. You're going to be working with obviously digital transformation, and it's going to create a framework where you're going to have to be able to scan the environment and make decisions quickly and accurately. So if that said, I encourage you to connect with me, set up a call just to review where you think you are. These are confidential conversations. And one of the things I love about this LinkedIn Live space is that if you scroll through and you just listen for a bit, people will come back to me and say, well, I listened and that was so relevant. And I want to make sure that people are not kind of sitting in their workspaces and not able to verbalize some of these thoughts. Because there really is, you can't go to HR, and I'll be honest, because they are there to support, but also they're there to support the reorganization of the company. So if you go to HR, you give them a reason to reorg you right away. And I've seen that happen as well, where an individual went to HR and said, okay, what if, what would happen? What package would I get? How would this work? And then guess what? They prepared the package and gave it to him. And then he was separated from that company. Within a month, actually, this happened. So the safe space is what I've desired to create. And my theme for this year, particularly the first 6 months of 2026, is going to be action. Not conversation, not gripe, not disillusionment, not hiding in the corner, no longer hiding behind a keyboard. I am going to create the platforms for action. And these are all positive actions. And these will help to frame what our futures look like. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening for today. If you knew anybody that could use this information, feel free to share it with them. Tag them or forward this live onto them, and then have them to reach out to me. And I can communicate a bit more about the framework past the 3 items I've mentioned today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.